morning, everyone, and welcome to another Tuesday morning. Today, I am so glad to have you join us for another episode of JumpStart. We have another special guest with us. Our co-host, Chaplain Ivan Omanya, is on vacation, and so I'm riding solo, but we are glad that you have joined us, and we are going to get right into our special guest today. So before we start, let's have a word of prayer. Gracious Father, I want to thank you so much for blessing us. We thank you for the gift of life. We thank you for the ability to say yes to your call in ministry. Now, as we begin this episode of JumpStart, Lord, I pray that you will be with us, that you will bless us during this time. We thank you for being in our midst. In your name I pray. Amen. Again, welcome everyone. And I would like to welcome my special guest, Chaplain Francisco Cross. Chaplain Francisco is the Director of Mission and Spiritual Care for Adventist Health. And we are so glad to have you with us. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Gilda. It's a privilege. Our paths crossed many years ago, and here we are again, getting to be a part of dialogue and ministry. And so I'm excited to be here with you this morning.
Thank you, thank you. So as you all know, that we bring chaplains and experts into this segment to really kickstart our week. We want to give our chaplains the opportunity to be fed, so we pour into them. So Chaplain Cross, you have an interesting journey to ministry. And, thinking back to when our paths intersected in California, you were getting ready to have a career in dentistry, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
It's interesting to me to see how God has the plans for us. And, share a little bit about your journey and how you accepted the call to ministry.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because even this morning, when I got up, I started thinking about some of the things that I was going to share here that I thought would be appropriate just for us as chaplains. And it's just amazing to look back. I actually found myself looking at my ordination portfolio, which you actually helped me with when I was putting together at the time. And I just started going through there and revisiting, just my journey, from being here in Northern California to going to Oakwood to Loma Linda. And it's just so interesting, just like you said, when you actually feel like, you're going the right path. In this case, I thought dentistry is what God had for me, and had great opportunities to travel the world and to be able to do dentistry in different countries. But then there was just a turning point, which I felt that, God definitely had closed some doors. In this case, it happened to be a car accident, and that really changed everything. And so it's just amazing to see how God really does play a role, and really just fine tuning exactly where he wants you to go. It's something that I think I always just go back and look at my journals and take a look at how I have actually gone from point A to point Z, so to speak. But it always ceases to amaze me how God is just so involved and engaged in being sure that we follow the path that God has for us.
Sure. Now, I remember when I first met you, you have a way about you where you really draw people to you. And I know that when you minister to people, you bring that same infectious, magnetic personality to the bedside, to the boardroom. But you said something that you had a chance to travel. One of the things that I appreciate about you is that you have a heart for mission. You have done multiple mission trips. Tell us a bit about how you've translated because you had a bug where you like to go on mission trips. How have you translated that to now being the director of mission and spiritual care in the hospital setting?
Absolutely. So, when I first started chaplaincy ministry in Southern California at Loma Linda Medical Center, I wore a bracelet that I don't wear anymore, but it said "in their shoes," and for me, it was a constant reminder of the stories that I would constantly come across. And so when I started traveling to different countries, one of the things that I appreciated is that it was an opportunity for me to really get to understand the stories of people from all around the world. And it just was so amazing to see that although we were separated by literally thousands and thousands of miles, there was one thing that stood out, and it was that everyone has a story, regardless of what culture you come from, what religion, what ethnicity. Everyone's story was so significant. And so being in my shoes now having been a chaplain for a little over 10 years, what I have found to really translate authentically, even in my role now as a chaplain and as a director, is that there are people that come into our hospital doors 200 plus times a day. That's about how many people we see at our hospital. Wow. And that's 200 opportunities for me to really find a way of how I can get to know their story. I really believe that when we look at the gospel ministry and we look at the ministry of Christ, I really believe that that if there's one thing that I'm going to learn, it's that everyone has a story. And I think what Jesus modeled so wonderfully is the fact that everyone's story was precious in his sight. And so that's really helped me with staying grounded on the ministry that God has me on now, is being available to hear those people's stories.
Yeah. Now you say 200 visit, 200 opportunities. That must be draining at times. And so one of the questions that we always ask is, where do you get your energy from? Because you're always on the go. You've got that energetic personality. Where do you get your energy from, Chaplain Cross?
Yeah, so I mean, I should put a disclaimer out there. I do not visit 200 patients a day. I would just have nothing left in my own cup. But it's 200 opportunities, and I think, for me personally, I kind of was thinking just the other day that during this pandemic, it's really even further pushed me to think about what it is that I can do to give me the energy that I need so that I can be the best for those people that I come in contact with. And I have to be honest, Yilda, one of the first things that I would say is community. And I know community is very broad, and you can say church family and friends and family and different things. But for me, what I've learned, since work is a place where I spend most of my time, is my colleagues. And I'm thinking of one person in particular who comes to mind that works here in a different department, but is someone that I can rely on. And one of our questions in the EdgeCap surveys is, do you have a best friend at work? And I can truly say that was a journey for me, because frankly, if I had a best friend at work, I just may not be working. But God has given me someone that I can actually confide in, to actually have an accountability partner. And so having that camaraderie really has just been able to give me that pickup boost, so to speak, like the JumpStart that you're doing here. It really helps me to really kind of ground myself. And on those days when I need support, I know where to go.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And to segue onto the energy, you have a pretty big event that is about to change your life coming up. Tell us about that. And, as chaplains, we have our family life, and then of course we have our professional life. So you've told us about your professional life. What does Chaplain Cross do when Chaplain Cross goes home?
Well, I would answer that a little bit differently if you asked me that question a little over a year ago. I would probably go fishing, take my boat out, or I'd probably go and ride my bike. But my wife and I, we are expecting our first child, our first baby boy. And actually, my phone is on loud, so if it goes off, it's just because, well, maybe my wife is calling me. The due date is actually coming up. It's in less than 3 weeks.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. It's definitely a season that I have not experienced. We have not experienced before. But going back to your question about, where do we gather energy from? Having a spouse who's just not my wife, but a best friend that I get to spend my entire life with. I wouldn't want to do with anyone else. And so for us, it's just an amazing season in our lives just to get to bask in what God has gifted us with our very own child here in just a few weeks.
Yeah. And as I was preparing to speak with you today, I was thinking about how God puts people in our path and intersects our lives with other lives. And I remember when you were at Loma Linda, and there's something about you that you want to give those that you come in contact with these life-changing moments. What is it that speaks to you that you want to leave relationships for the better after having spent time with an individual?
I realized in our chaplain ministry work, Gilda, that those opportunities, those crosshair moments that we get to intersect with the patients and patients' families that come really in that small window, not oftentimes do we ever get to see them again. And so for me, when I think of this idea that God has called me to be a part of this ministry, I always tell myself that if this is my last opportunity that I get to be with this family, what would I want them to be left with? And I've answered that question many different times over the years. But what I've realized is that what people need more than anything is they need to know that they're loved and cared for, that they're valued. And so what's burning inside of me is this idea that I get to be engaged in a conversation where I get to have an opportunity to hear someone's story. But even furthermore, how can I engage with that person in such a way that after we've talked, and maybe if prayer was something that they needed after that moment, how will they be changed for the better or for the worse? And so that's where I really try to have an authentic, genuine time of conversation with them, because in the world that we live in, time is priceless. And we get to pick and choose how and when we spend that time and with who. But for patients that come through our hospital doors, they don't choose to be here. Life happens. And I think, again, looking back at the ministry of Christ, having that availability and that desire to be there to support that family or patient during that time is so important.
Yeah. As we get ready to wrap up our show today, you have been blessed to have journeyed through your mission trips and through chaplaincy, and now as the director of mission and spiritual care. This show, JumpStart, is for chaplains. What would you say to our chaplains out there who are tuning in to receive an energetic word today?
Man, great question. To be honest with you, I would probably say the words that come into my mind is to take courage. Our work of ministry is one that sometimes, to be frank with you, it can be exhausting. We're constantly giving ourselves emotionally and spiritually. And I just can't help but think of, the idea that Jesus, has called each of us, right, to different ministries. And so I always like to reflect back and to remind myself of the calling. When God called me to chaplaincy ministry, I didn't know. I was 10 years old. But when he called me as a chaplain visiting my dying grandmother. And so our ministry is a journey. We can never say we have achieved. But if I was to say one thing to our chaplains, I would say take courage. The pandemic was a lot. Death happens a lot in our families. but take courage in knowing that God has asked us to be co-laborers in a ministry that we're not doing by ourselves.
Wow, wow. Well, thank you so much, Chaplain Cross, for giving us a bit of your time. I know you're very busy, and I want to thank you for the work that you have done and that you continue to do as you've answered the call. And I would say to you, take courage, as you continue to do your work, but also as you begin this new chapter of your life, parenthood, fatherhood. I wish you and your wife all the best. And you have your network of chaplains rallying around you, celebrating new birth. So thank you so much. Let's have a word of prayer as we close our segment today. Gracious Father, I want to thank you so much for blessing us. I want to thank you for Chaplain Cross, for calling him to this ministry. You've obviously blessed him and you've poured into him. So Lord, allow what you have put into him to spill over so that it can bless those around him. Lord, I want to pray for him and for his wife as they get ready to start parenthood. Lord, bless Amanda as she gives birth, journey with them on this new chapter of their lives. This is our prayer. In your precious name, I pray. Amen.